Today we are doing a professional studio photo shoot with the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I just got this phone a couple weeks ago and the client wanted something that was still high production value but kind of had a user-generated feel, so this is the perfect chance to put this phone to work. Let's get going. So we got our model here, Rashad. He's got his outfit on, and today we're shooting for a brand called Shirley Temple. It's a retro soda brand. All right, so we're gonna get started here. You can see we have a super bright, colorful and poppy color palette today. 1950s diner type bowling polo on. So with iPhones these days, their image processors are so strong, their color correction's incredible. I'm just gonna be shooting their native 24 megapixel JPEG images to increase the overall workflow and to really eliminate any need for post-production in Lightroom. It might not be the most powerful component that I can get out of the phone, but it's definitely gonna be the most convenient, and that's the real benefit of shooting on a smartphone. Using smartphones, you're really just using your eye and looking at the color. So I'm looking at the whites on his shirt and then the whites on the bottle, and that's really what I'm going off of for the white balance, right? You're looking at the whites, and if they're too yellow, then the lighting's too warm, and conversely, if they're too blue, then your lighting's too cool. But with this, I want it to be as coolly toned as possible, so I put the light as blue as possible, and I think it's just gonna make everything look brighter and just happier. You know, this brand is all about kind of like happiness. Share the joy with Shirley Temple. The graphics are over the top, all these bright colors, and it's just, their whole thing is just like, soda makes you happy, right? Soda brings you together, you know, you're sharing it with people. So that's kind of the vibe we're going for, all right? I'm doing some screen record so you can see what settings I'm using. You see I'm using what Apple calls all 7 lenses. A lot of people gave Apple, you know, a lot of harsh feedback that it's not actually 7 lenses because they're using, you know, different cropping and different digital zooms. But at the same time, I would much rather have those as an option than not have it. So although it's not getting the full 24 megapixels, I feel like people these days really get caught up on the specs and what's on the paper and how many megapixels is it and all the stats, right? But at the end of the day, when you're actually using this as a content creation tool, you'll see in the screen recording, I'm using all of the 1x, so the 28, 24, the 35. I'm using the 2x, even though that's a digital zoom and that's technically cutting off pixels from my image. It's giving me options to frame Rashad with the bottle, with the cup, better than 1x zoom on the camera. So it's really dependent on what your composition is. So, you know, Apple's done some amazing job engineering this phone to be able to make it as versatile as possible. And don't get hung up on how many megapixel the image is, because I've never had a client in the 5 years that I've been doing professional photography get back to me saying that there's not enough megapixels. So when you think about how photos are gonna be used and distributed nowadays, 99% of the photos that professional photographers or content creators are taking are gonna be viewed on the smartphone. So don't get hung up on the specs, right? Use the camera and focus on composition, focus on lighting. So that brings me to the next step. Tip number 3 when doing smartphone photography is lighting. So you'll see I have an accent light right here. I have my key light, which is right behind me. My key light is a 600 watt bicolor LED light. I'm able to adjust the white balance, and it gives me essentially a perfect lighting of Rashad against this pink background. Right? My secondary light right here, I have it in the lantern, so it's filling in any shadows without casting any shadows on the other side. You can create professional content from a smartphone, right? If you know how to use lighting, if you know how to art direct models, understand branding and what a client is actually looking for, So it's more than just photography, right? So that's the fourth tip. It's understand branding and understand where content is being distributed. And once you really take a holistic view of marketing from a digital standpoint, you're gonna be able to really create content that kind of reverse engineers the entire workflow, right? You're not just taking a photo and not considering anything else. You're taking a step back, looking at the entire situation and the entire creative brief from a holistic perspective. You're looking at the Instagram. Okay, these are the type of images they want on Instagram. You're looking at the website. Okay, this is the type of images they want on the website. Here's the aspect ratio. Is it landscape oriented or is it portrait? Is it gonna be going out on email or is it gonna be going out to their PR team? So you really need to understand and consider the entire content creation workflow from pre-production all the way to distribution, and where the camera fits in that at a certain point almost gets you irrelevant. And Apple really proved that with their own keynote by using the iPhone 15 Pro Max and using some ridiculously expensive lighting, drones, and crazy professional color grading, and they had the best in the biz doing it. They did essentially their entire workflow was the same except for the iPhone. So it just shows that if you can understand a production from a really holistic perspective, that you can get good imagery with any camera. Another advantage of shooting on smartphones, you can just quickly switch between video and photos. So especially for social media type content, being able to just quickly switch between those two formats is really an advantage, and makes the newer smartphones, especially the iPhone 15 Pro Max, is kind of one of the best hybrid cameras for creating social media type content, because you can quickly toggle between video and photo, and it really immerses you into focusing on the composition rather than the settings or having to fiddle between menus and trying to make sure your settings and the menus are all set up. So we're just going to do some quick videos. We are wrapped for today. I believe this video showed you that the camera you're using doesn't really matter. The iPhone 15 Pro Max, it's still an expensive piece of gear, but it's not a cinema grade or a super high resolution powerhouse like a Sony or Canon camera. The thing that really is the advantage of the smartphone is just the workflow. I'm gonna go home and I'm simply just gonna text Rashad the images that I think are best. I'm not gonna edit them at all. I'm just gonna straight out of camera, just send them over to him, and he's gonna send them over to the client. So it's really the workflow that makes it such an advantage of using a smartphone for content creation for social media. So get out there, whatever camera you have, just use it, just keep shooting, and just keep focusing on composition. That's really the most important. If you can nail composition, nail your lighting, and really encompass what the brand represents and how it's gonna be distributed, you're gonna create amazing content. So get out there, keep creating.